Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the English Over Tea Listen and Speak. I am your host, Anna. This is the podcast where we speak slowly and clearly so you can easily improve your English listening and speaking skills.
And I am your co-host, Dan. Hello, everybody. It is so great to be here with you all today. How are you doing today, Anna?
I am doing very well, Dan. Thank you for asking. The weather outside is starting to get really warm and the sun is shining brightly. It actually makes me want to go outside, feel the breeze, and be near the water.
Oh, I completely agree with you. When the sun is hot, there is absolutely nothing better than feeling the cool water on your feet. And that weather update perfectly leads us into our main topic for today's episode.
It certainly does. Today, we are going to talk about 3 words in the English language that are very similar to each other. In fact, many English learners get these 3 words confused all the time. The 3 words are beach, coast, and shore.
That is a fantastic topic, Anna. These words are definitely tricky for beginners. They all have something to do with the land that is right next to the water, but they are not exactly the same thing. They have different meanings, and native speakers use them in completely different situations.
Exactly. So if you are planning a summer vacation or if you just want to talk about nature in English with your friends, this episode will be very helpful for you. We will explain each word, give you some easy examples, and tell you how we use them in everyday conversations.
Let's start with the first word and probably the most popular word of the 3. That word is beach. Let me spell that for you. It is B-E-A-C-H. Beach.
Yes, the beach. When I hear the word beach, I immediately feel happy and relaxed. So what exactly is a beach, Dan? How do we define it?
A beach is a specific area of land right next to the water. But here is the most important part about a beach. It is covered in sand or small stones.
Right. Sand is the soft yellow or white powder that gets stuck in your shoes. If you go to a beach, you will probably take off your shoes and walk on the soft sand with your bare feet.
And some beaches do not have soft sand. Some beaches have small, smooth stones instead. We call those small stones pebbles. So depending on where you travel, you can find a sandy beach or a pebble beach.
That is a great point. And beaches are almost always places where people go to relax, play, and have fun. When you think of a beach, you think of human activities. You don't just look at a beach from far away, you go to the beach to do things.
Exactly. For example, what do people do at the beach? Well, many people like to sunbathe. Sunbathing means lying down in the warm sun to get warm and to make your skin darker. Just remember to wear your sunscreen so you don't burn.
Yes, always wear plenty of sunscreen. People also love to build sandcastles. A sandcastle is a little house or a little castle made completely out of wet sand. Children absolutely love building sandcastles at the beach.
Another very common activity at the beach is swimming. You can run from the hot sand straight into the cold ocean to swim. Or you can play sports on the beach, like beach volleyball or frisbee.
So the word beach is very focused on the physical area of sand, and it's very focused on human activities. We use the word when we are talking about going somewhere specifically for fun.
Let's give our listeners a few clear example sentences using the word beach.
Okay, here is an example. This weekend, I am going to the beach with my friends to swim and relax in the sun.
Perfect. Here is another example. We walked along the beach and looked for beautiful seashells. Seashells are the hard, empty homes of small sea animals that wash up on the sand.
I love finding seashells. Notice how in both of those examples, we are talking about being directly on the sand, relaxing, and doing an activity. We wouldn't say, I'm going to the coast to build a sandcastle. That would sound very strange to a native English speaker.
Yes, it would. You build sandcastles on the beach, not on the coast. We will explain why later.
Let's talk a little bit more about the water at a beach. Most of the time when we say beach, we are talking about the land next to the ocean or the sea. But can you have a beach next to a lake, Dan?
That is a very good question. Yes, absolutely. You can definitely have a beach next to a lake. If a lake has an area of sand where people go to swim and lay in the sun, we simply call that a lake beach. For example, you could say, we spent the whole afternoon at the beach by the lake.
Now, for our listeners, it is very important to practice the pronunciation of this word. The word beach has a long E sound in the middle. Beach. You have to stretch your mouth wide, almost like you're smiling broadly.
Yes, please be very careful with the pronunciation. If you make the vowel sound too short, it sounds like a completely different word in English. A word that is not very polite to say in public. So remember, smile big and say beach.
Let's practice together. Ready? Beach.
Beach.
Great job. Now we have fully covered what a beach is. It's a beautiful, sandy, fun place where humans go to play. But what happens when we zoom out? What happens when we look at the entire map instead of just looking at the sand?
That is exactly where our next vocabulary word comes in. But before we get to that second word, let's just do one quick review to make sure everyone understands the concept of the beach perfectly.
Good idea. So a beach is the specific sandy or rocky area touching the water. You go there to swim, play sports, and sunbathe.
Perfect summary, Anna. Now we are ready to move on to the next confusing word on our list today.
We just zoomed out from our fun, sandy, sunny beach to look at the bigger picture. When we stop looking at the sand and start looking at a map, we need a different word, and that word is coast.
Yes, coast. Let me spell that carefully for our listeners. It is C-O-A-S-T, coast.
So what exactly is a coast? The coast is the line or the boundary where the land meets the ocean. But we use this word when we are talking about a very large area. We're talking about geography and maps, not just a small place to put your towel.
Exactly right. Geography is the study of the earth, the land, and maps. When you look at a map of a country, the edge of that country that touches the ocean water is called the coast. It is a massive area.
Think about it this way. A beach is small, but a coast is huge. A beach is just one specific spot where you go to swim and build sandcastles. But a single coast can be hundreds or even thousands of kilometers long.
That is a brilliant way to explain it. In fact, one single coast can have hundreds of different beaches on it. For example, the state of California in America has a very long, famous coast. And along that massive California coast, there are many, many individual, beautiful beaches where people go to surf and relax.
That is a great example. So we use the word coast when we are talking about regions, directions, or large distances. We also often use it to describe where an entire city or town is located.
Yes, we call those coastal cities. A coastal city is simply a city that is built right next to the ocean. Los Angeles is a coastal city. Sydney in Australia is a coastal city. Barcelona in Spain is a coastal city. They are all located on the coast.
And do you remember earlier when we said you would not say, I am going to the coast to build a sandcastle?
Yes, I remember that. It sounded very funny.
That is because the coast is a giant geographical region. You don't build a little sandcastle on a map, you build it on the sand. But you would say something like, we drove along the coast all afternoon.
Oh, driving along the coast is an absolutely wonderful experience. When you drive along the coast, you are driving on a road that is right near the ocean. You can look out the window of your car and see the beautiful blue water stretching far away into the distance.
Just don't drive your car off the road and onto the beach. That is a very bad idea. Your car will get stuck deep in the soft sand and you will need a tractor to pull you out.
Yes, please leave your car on the road. Now, there's a very, very important rule about the word coast. This is a strict rule that English learners really need to remember so they sound like native speakers.
Oh, I know exactly what you're going to say. This is about the type of water, right?
You guessed it. We only use the word coast when we are talking about an ocean or a sea. We never use the word coast for a lake or a river. This is a strict geographical rule in English.
This is so important. Earlier, we said you can have a lake beach, which is a sandy spot by a lake, but you absolutely cannot have a lake coast. Even if the lake is enormous, like the Great Lakes in North America, we do not call the edge of it a coast.
Right. Coasts belong strictly to the oceans and the seas. If you are standing next to a river, you are not on the coast. If you are next to a lake, you are not on the coast. You must be at the edge of the salty sea or the ocean.
Let's practice with some clear example sentences so our listeners can really understand how to use this word in daily life. Dan, do you have an example?
I do. My dream is to buy a small house on the coast so I can watch the ocean waves every morning.
That is a lovely dream, Dan. Here's another example. The storm is moving very fast and it will hit the east coast of the country tomorrow.
In that example, you were talking about the weather in a very large area of the country. That is a perfect use of the word coast. You will often hear weather reporters on the television news talking about the coast.
Yes, they might say there will be heavy rain along the coast today. They wouldn't say heavy rain along the beach because they're talking about the whole huge region, not just the sandy play area.
In some countries, people even use the word coast to talk about culture and lifestyle. For example, in the United States, you hear people talk about the East Coast and the West Coast all the time.
Yes, they say things like, I'm an East Coast person, or I love West Coast music. They're using the geography of the ocean to describe a whole lifestyle. You would never hear someone say, I'm an East Beach person to describe their entire culture. It just doesn't make any sense.
No, it really doesn't. So, if we compare the two words we have learned so far today, the beach is the sandy or rocky place where you play, swim, and relax. The coast is the long geographical line on a map where the land meets the ocean.
A beach is small and specific. A coast is large and general. You can easily walk across a beach in 5 minutes, but it could take you days or even weeks to drive along an entire coast.
That is a fantastic way to think about the difference, Anna. I think our listeners are doing a great job following along. English vocabulary can be a little complicated, but taking it one step at a time makes it so much easier to understand.
It certainly does. And now we have successfully covered the beach and the coast. We know about the sand and we know about the map. But there is still one more word left on our list today.
Yes, the third word is often considered the trickiest one of all because its meaning is somewhere in the middle. It's not exactly a beach and it's not exactly a coast.
That mysterious third word is going to challenge everything we just learned. Let's make sure you have beach and coast firmly in your mind before we introduce this final puzzle piece. Everyone, if you are just joining us, today we are talking about three tricky English words that learners often confuse: beach, coast, and our final vocabulary word for today, shore.
Yes, the shore. Let me spell that word carefully for you. It is S-H-O-R-E, shore. This word is very interesting because its meaning sits right in the middle of beach and coast.
That is exactly right, Dan. So what is a shore? Simply put, the shore is the land along the edge of a body of water, any body of water. And that is the biggest, most important difference right there.
Exactly. Do you remember when we said you can never have a lake coast or a river coast? We learned that the word coast is only used for the ocean, but the word shore is much more flexible and useful in everyday life.
Yes, you can have an ocean shore, a seashore, a lake shore, or even a river shore. If there is a large amount of water meeting the land, that physical edge is called the shore.
So if you were walking next to a beautiful, quiet lake in the mountains, you were walking along the shore. Specifically, we call that the lake shore. If you were standing next to a wide river watching the boats go by, you were standing on the shore of the river.
That makes it so much easier to remember. The shore is simply the meeting place of water and land. And the word shore is very common in literature and poetry too. You often hear singers talking about the distant shore in beautiful English songs.
Oh, definitely. It has a very nice, peaceful sound to it. But wait, Anna, if a beach is also the meeting place of water and land, what is the exact difference between a beach and a shore?
Oh, that is the perfect question. This is where many English learners get a little bit confused, so let's make it very clear. A beach is actually a type of shore, but a beach is specifically covered in sand or small pebbles, and it is a comfortable place where people go to relax and play.
I see. So every beach is a shore, but not every shore is a beach.
Exactly. Let me explain with a picture in your mind. Imagine you are walking next to the ocean, but instead of soft, warm sand, the ground is covered in sharp, dangerous rocks. There are dark cliffs and big, angry waves are crashing violently against the rocks.
Oh, wow. That does not sound like a fun place to build a sandcastle. You definitely cannot lay down and sunbathe there.
No, you absolutely cannot. Because there's no sand and no safe place to play, an English speaker would not call that a beach. They would call it a rocky shore. The word shore does not care about sand, and it doesn't care about human fun. It just describes the physical edge of the water.
That makes perfect sense. A shore can be very muddy, it can be covered in sharp rocks, it can be covered in tall, wet grass, or it can be a beautiful sandy beach. The word shore is the umbrella word that includes all of those things.
Before we review, Dan, are there any common English phrases or everyday expressions that use the word shore?
Actually, yes, there are two very common words, onshore and offshore. Have you ever heard those words, Anna?
I have. People usually use those words when they're talking about the wind or the weather, right?
Exactly. If you are standing on the beach and the wind is blowing from the water directly into your face, that is an onshore wind. The wind is blowing onto the shore. But if the wind is blowing from the land out toward the water, pushing away from you, that is an
offshore wind.
Oh, that is very helpful. Surfers really care about onshore and offshore winds because the direction of the wind completely changes the shape of the ocean waves.
They certainly do. Another way we use the word offshore is in the business world. Sometimes you'll hear people on the television news talk about offshore banking or offshore companies. This simply means the business is located in a different country, usually across the ocean. It's away from their home shore.
That is a fantastic vocabulary bonus for our listeners. Okay, I think it's time for a final review of all three words together to make sure everyone understands the differences perfectly.
I love reviews. Let's start with the smallest one, the beach. A beach is a sandy or pebbly area right next to the water. We use this word when we are talking about human activities like swimming, playing sports, or relaxing in the sun.
Next, we have the coast. The coast is a massive geographical region. It's the long line on a world map where an entire country or state meets the ocean. Remember, we only use coast for oceans and seas, never for lakes or rivers. You drive along the coast, or you talk about coastal cities.
And finally, the shore. The shore is the physical edge of any body of water, oceans, lakes, or rivers. It can be sandy, rocky, or muddy. It is simply the exact line where the water stops and the land begins.
Perfect. You explained that so clearly, Dan. I think our listeners are going to feel very confident using these three words the next time they speak English.
I hope so. English vocabulary can be a little bit tricky sometimes, but practicing a little bit every single day makes a huge difference.
You know, Anna, sitting here talking about the beach and the shore is making me very thirsty. I think it might be time for a nice hot cup of tea.
Oh, I completely agree. I would love a cup of tea right now. And that actually brings us perfectly to the end of today's episode.
Yes, it does. We really hope you enjoyed learning with us today and that you now feel confident talking about your next trip to the water.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode. As always, keeping up with your daily practice is the best way to improve your speaking skills. You have been listening to the Easy English Podcast, a proud part of the English Over Tea series. We absolutely love making these lessons for you.
We certainly do. Don't forget to practice these new words with your friends or try writing down some of your own example sentences in a notebook tonight. Have a wonderful week, everybody, and goodbye. Thanks for listening, everyone. If you're enjoying learning with us, subscribe so you don't miss our episodes. Tell us in the comments, do you prefer relaxing on a sandy beach or walking along a rocky shore? See you next time.